one difference. Now, a normal is perpendicular to a tangent. When we find this gradient here, we get the gradient of the tangent. That's what we get here. So even if they had asked you to find the normal, we would go through the same step up to here. We have to differentiate and find the gradient. But the normal is not the tangent. The normal is perpendicular to the tangent. So what that means is that if the tangent M1 gradient is -4, then the normal gradient, can anyone tell me what the gradient of the normal would be? You did this. Perpendicular lines, the product of their gradient is -1. Right? So if the tangent has a gradient of -4, then we can use this formula to find the gradient of the normal. So all I do, if I'm multiplying by -4 here, then M2, the gradient of the normal, would be -1 divided by -4, which would give me a quarter. Is that clear with everyone? When you find the equation of a normal, is to find the gradient of the normal. That's the only additional step. When you find the gradient, it's not the gradient of the normal. You get the gradient of the tangent. So what you need to do is use this formula, M1 times M2 equal -1 to find the gradient of the normal. Right, so I'm going to just take out all of this because I really want you to get this. So when we find the equation of a normal, we follow the same steps. One, we differentiate. Right? Step 2, find M. M is the gradient of the tangent. So I call it M1. But they didn't ask me to find the equation of the tangent. They asked me for the normal. So the third step would be use this formula to find the gradient of the normal. Are we good so far? Find the gradient of the normal, what will we do next? So in this case, we know the gradient is negative. It's not negative, sorry, it's positive a quarter. What's the next step? We find the equation of a line. We know that we found the gradient of the normal. What's the next step? We had already found y to be what? I can't remember. What was our y value? -6, right?
Yes, sir, -6.
Yeah. So we use those same values again. So it's the same thing. Use x, y, and m to find c. So -6 is equal to m quarter times 1 plus c, and all we should get here is -6¼ because you'll be taking over -quarter is equal to c. And that's all. So your equation would be y is equal to a quarter x, put in your m value, minus 6¼ That's your c value. So basically, that's how you find the equation of the normal. It's just like find the equation of the tangent, except you don't use the gradient that you find first. You find the reciprocal of that gradient. Right? So let me just perpendicular lines, right? If M1 is equal to 5, can anyone tell me what M2 will be equal to? The gradient of the perpendicular line?
1/5, sir.
Yeah, it will be a -1. See, invert, the gradients will always have the different sign. If one is positive, the other will be negative, right? So if the gradient of the tangent, and I need someone else to answer, is half, -1/2, what would the gradient of the normal be?
+2.
Wonderful, wonderful. Because when you multiply these two gradients, you must always get -1, right? So I'll do one more. If the gradient of the tangent is 2/3, what would the gradient, and someone else, what would the gradient of the normal be?
-3/2.
Come on. You upturn and you just change the sign. That's basically how we find the gradient of the normal. Any questions concerning this? Whether it's a normal or a tangent, basically two things we have to do. The formula is y is equal to mx plus c for the equation of a line, right? So you need to find the gradient, and that's found by differentiating. If it's a normal, then you have to use this extra step to find the gradient after you get the gradient of the tangent. After finding the gradient, you need to find c. Just use the y, the m, and the x to find c, and that's basically the procedure. Okay.